What's up, everybody? Laura Sanko here, joined by Anthony Smith, and welcome to Hooks In, where we help you get your hooks into the ideas surrounding all these fights. You know, our show rhythm is strong, Anthony. It's been 6 months.
Well, okay. We got to do these more often than every 6 months.
All right, welcome to our semi-annual Hooks In podcast.
Well, the terrible part is, like, we were planning on doing this like once a week or at least once a month, and like we totally messed that
We're
up.
almost there.
We're almost there. Well,
almost
let's work harder.
there. Yeah. Well, the good thing is that we have a ton to talk about right now because we've just ripping through these fights on Fight Island. So, obviously the thing we're going to talk about the most is this Conor Poirier fight coming up. As if enough people haven't already given their takes on it, why not give ours? But man, I feel like we have to at least touch on the other fights that just took place. And so I guess I'll start chronologically. I mean, that fight between Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar, unbelievable performance from Max. I kind of was like speechless at the end of that. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I'm like you said, everybody's talked about this. I feel like maybe we're beating a dead horse, but I think it's one of those performances where it kind of deserves it. Like,
yeah, some horses deserve to be beaten.
Right, like once Jesus Christ. Once
I can say that.
once once we got into like the Chiesa Magny fight, and then now we're moving into Conor, I think it's kind of getting lost in the shuffle a little bit, and I feel like if that was the only fight that would have been in like a 2-week span in a typical MMA world where we're not having back-to-back-to-back fights, I think that's something that would be talked about a whole bunch. But the way this whole machine has to keep rolling, we got to roll into the next one. But I wonder how Max feels. I wonder if he feels like it's getting the love that it should get, because he broke his own record, and probably put up numbers that, like, we may not see a fight like that ever again.
Mm-hmm.
And if we do, I don't even know what that looks like. I think that it takes two people for that kind of performance to happen. Like, Kattar has to be able to take those shots and not go down. The ref has to allow that to go. The corners have to allow that fight to continue. I'm not sure if we see something like that again.
I agree. Yeah, I don't. You said you wonder how he feels if he's getting love. I don't know if you can give this fight, that performance, I should say, enough love. And you're right. It's a little bit of a shame that we've had. I mean, the Wednesday fights were great as well, but it's a little bit of a shame that we're clicking along so fast here, and that we can't just kind of sit back and admire the artistry there. And man, don't kill me. Our first show back 6 months later, I'm already like putting you on the spot, but it was just because I was put on the spot after that fight and about the whole topic of, stopping fights, right? And that's one that you and I have talked about quite a bit. I guess, and also I'll just ask you, like, when you were watching that fight, I guess I probably know the answer to this, so I'm kind of answering my own question. But when you're watching that fight, did it even cross your mind, or does it only cross your mind because certain people bring it up and you're like, no, that's stupid?
When I was watching it, there's never a time that I seen where, like, oh man, maybe we should probably stop this fight. I never seen a moment like that. Like, obviously he was getting dominated, but there wasn't one moment where I thought, all right, he's out of it. He's not defending himself. Like, he looked to me like he was in it the whole time.
Yeah.
As the fight continued, I was obviously getting tweets and Instagram messages and people commenting saying, like, that anytime something like that happens, I'm always tied to that, just because of I think that, I don't know if it's mine is the maybe the first one in recent history that's happened and gone like that. But I just, and maybe mine was a little more high profile. Maybe it was a main event. I think that it was right there in the spotlight in front of everyone's face, because you've seen really terrible shit happen to people on the undercards before, and we don't really hear about it. So I think maybe because mine was the main event as well, I'm always kind of tied to those. And I kind of always have the same answer. We can argue back and forth all we want about who, or about whether that fight needs to be stopped. We can have that conversation all day. The argument that I won't have with you is who needs to stop that fight. And everyone seems to think it needs to be coaches, it needs to be cornermen. And I've always argued against that. When you're in that moment for those 25 minutes, my coach's job is to help me win a fight.
Yeah.
The ref's job is to enforce the rules and stop the fight and protect the fighters when it's necessary. And the doctor's job is to back up the referee if he doesn't stop the fight. So I guess I don't know why the refs and the doctors don't get more shit for that. Like it's always ends up on the cornerman. And
Mhm.
again, I don't think that that fight needed to be stopped. But if it did, it's not his coach's and cornerman's job to do that. So I was really happy that they let it go. Did he take some unneeded damage? Possibly. Could there be some longer effects down the road? Possibly. But I feel like he sleeps well at night knowing that he gave everything he had for the entire time. Uh,
Absolutely, and I think that one thing that people don't always, but fans don't always give a lot of thought to is the damage that, having a fight stopped. If that's not been an understanding between you and your corner person, uh, if you haven't had that conversation in depth about whether you're okay with it, when I could do it, when I can't do it, is it even on the table? And then they do it, the damage that that can do between the coach fighter relationship, the trust that you need to have in your corner people, man, it's irreparable. And I feel like fans don't really give a lot of thought to that because, well, I mean, maybe because they haven't been in there. It's just that relationship is it's a unique, special, intimate one. And to go out there and like, it can break that trust. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
yeah, 100%. Yeah, 2 points for to your point. Look at Deontay Wilder. His whole camp still seemingly is a little bit in shambles
mhm.
because of them stopping that fight and him disagreeing with it versus Tyson Fury. And you see the excuses coming out, and he should have stopped it. He shouldn't have stopped it. I'm mad at my coach. I'm not mad at my coach. It's back and forth all the time. Like they're having internal problems
And
because
it's
of
more acceptable in boxing in general.
100%.
So
So I
it's
mean,
even less of a
imagine,
taboo thing to do in boxing.
yeah. Um, and the last thing on at least on this part that I want to touch on, I was having this conversation with a neighbor, and I wish I would have talked about it a little bit more on my show on Sirius, but a lot of people are saying that these coaches and cornermen aren't stopping the fight because the fighter is their cash cow. That's how they make their money. They don't want you. What that whole idea doesn't make any sense because if you're telling me that you believe that that guy cannot win that fight anymore, um, so whether you stop the fight or don't stop the fight, he's going to lose
Same
anyways.
result.
That's essentially the answer, right? So if his idea is to that he wants to make the most money, and you're arguing saying he's a bad person for not stopping the fight because he wants to make money, your fighter's going to lose anyways. I believe that what these coaches and cornermen are doing is they're giving their fighter every chance they can to prove to themselves that they can't win the fight. And I think that that's what it comes down to, especially at least in my situation with Mark. He knew that I probably wasn't going to be able to pull it off. He wants to give me every opportunity to stay in there and keep my pride. That's what it comes down to. Even I seen you in Florida afterwards. I felt terrible. I was beat up, but I was holding my head high because
Yeah.
I did everything that I could do, and that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was a tough week, but man, I mean, that's exactly it to be able to walk around for the rest of your life knowing that you did everything you could have done in that fight. And it's hard to put a price on that, but I completely agree with you that money's really not a factor in that equation in those moments. And that shouldn't be what people talk about because I don't think that's a factor for any coach, no matter how big of a fight it is. So anyway, I didn't mean to spend that much time on that point, but like you said, you're kind of always the go-to guy on that. So
Right.
wanted to touch on it at least. And then of course Wednesday night we had Michael Chiesa absolutely dismantle Neil Magny. And I got to be honest, I did not see that fight going that way. I felt like it was a close fight in my mind, but I really thought Neil would be able to utilize his length a little bit more on the feet. And we know, striking is not necessarily where Mike shines the most. He shines on the mat. He shines on in those wrestling exchanges, and he did exactly that. But basically, there was so little striking in this Neil that Neil just couldn't get his game going.
That's kind of always been the knock on Neil Magny is that if you can take him down, you'll probably have a fairly easy time to dominating him. You're not going to finish him likely. You're good, but you can control Neil, and that's kind of the thing, and that's where his size and his length, and I don't want to call him lanky because that seems like a negative thing, but I've grappled with Neil before, and he I don't want like it's odd grappling with him. Like he is so long, so he is hard to get to a dominant position, but he is controllable. Because of his body type. He's not crazy explosive. He's not crazy strong because of the way that he's built. I was fairly certain that if Michael Chiesa could end up on top, that he would stay there for the remainder of whatever round that they were in, that's where he would be. I didn't see him submitting him. I didn't see him finishing him with punches because Neil's so crafty. He's very slick. You have to stay very fundamental when you're grappling with Neil, which kind of takes away your ability to open up and attack submissions and punches. But if Neil could have defended those takedowns, I think that that fight would have been much much closer, and I think that Neil probably gets the better of those striking exchanges over the 25 minutes. But that's kind of Chiesa's thing. If he can get a hold of you and drag you down, he did it to RDA. He
Yeah.
just did it to Magny. I mean, he can grapple with anybody in the world, and that's just. I'm glad he's finally getting that shine.
Yeah.
He's kind of always been that guy people look over, and I think that people are gonna have a hard time doing that now.
He's got that to me, he's got that really potent mix of a lot of times you'll have a wrestler that's their main grappling component, right? Is pure wrestling and they don't really go for submissions. Or you've got a guy who's an amazing Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy, so dangerous off his back, but doesn't really can't get the takedown or can't can't win in those wrestling scrambles. And what I think makes Michael Chiesa so special is he's such a potent mixture of phenomenal wrestling and phenomenal BJJ skills. He's got a really offensive submission game. But in those scrambles, man, some of those transitions were beautiful. I mean, his ability to get the fight where he wants it and then keep it there and keep it and not just like maintain top position and land some ground and pound, which is cool too. I'm not saying it's not, but to get top position, to keep it there and then to keep it moving and to keep it scrambling and be looking for submissions all the time and landing damage in between all those moments. It's makes for a really a tough night for anybody if that a fight with Michael Chiesa hits the ground.
Yeah, he absolutely showcased himself, and I think he had the perfect opponent to do that. Neil is going to give you problems from his back, and by Neil creating all those scrambles and issues that Michael had to deal with, it really gave him the ability to show how good he really was. Uh, I think he needs to really work on being a little more comfortable on his feet. But the cool thing about Michael Chiesa is he's very self aware. He knows that he definitely needs to continue to grow in his striking. Him and I have talked about it, working the desk together. He believes in his wrestling. He believes in his jujitsu, but he absolutely is aware that his striking isn't where it needs to be, and that's why I think his call out with Colby Covington is perfect. Colby's not a he's not a bad striker. He's basic. He's busy. He keeps the pace really high, but Colby's not out there just starching people and he's not digging deep in his Rolodex of striking techniques to trick
He's no
you.
style bender.
No, not at all. So I think that that's the perfect fight. I think that's a great matchup. I really like the wrestler versus wrestler slash grappler matchup. I think that that's fun.
Do
And
you
I
think
think
Mike can
it
get him down
gives.
though?
I do. And I think that Chiesa's chain wrestling is really good. He's just kind of relentless, and obviously he has the conditioning. I think that was my only other question. Neil Magny you're never going to get that dude tired. He
Oh
has a pace
no.
that you can't match. So he was able to keep that pace for 25 minutes with Neil Magny. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be able to do it with Colby, and that's where Colby kind of breaks people. It's Colby does it over it's a culmination over the entire period of a fight. So um, if he can't take down Colby Covington, I still think that's a great fight because I think that
Really?
they're very comparable in their striking abilities.
Yeah. I think, I might rate Colby's striking a little bit higher than it sounds like you do. I'm not saying he's style bender or anything, but um man, in the fights in the fights with good no, good Lord, I'm forgetting Usman and Lawler. Sorry, I was forgetting both their names at the same time. I was pretty impressed with what he offered on the feet. I understand Robbie Lawler's not the Robbie Lawler of 8 years ago, but he still has a lot to offer inside the octagon. And I was actually pretty impressed with what Colby had. You're right though. It's he's not throwing 360 kicks or anything like that.
Right. Well, it's impressive. I love
Yeah,
watching Colby strike. I'm just not like I like watching it for other reasons. It's not because
yeah,
he's some crazy technician. I like watching the way that he approaches the striking game.
yeah.
He's really just a throw a bunch of shit at the wall, and then
And never
if he
get tired.
right, if he throws 20 strikes, he might land 3, but you still have to defend all 20. And
Yeah,
that's kind of like his approach. He's just going to keep throwing it at the wall, and he's going to keep walking people down. He moves forward. The way that he moves, I think it puts a lot of mental pressure on people
yeah.
because he's not just walking you down. He's in, he's out, he's in, he's out, but he's always advancing, and it's fun to watch because he does take some shots on his way in. His head movement is kind of goofy. He kind of dips his head a lot, but I like watching it because of just how aggressive he is. It's just not the most technical thing in the world, but it's technical or not, it's effective and it's
Yeah.
working for him.
And to your point, he really looks to test the up down cardio of his opponents, as well as the cardio on the feet. And judging on that last performance, I mean, I when you go against another wrestler like Michael Chiesa, you're not going to test. You might try to test the up down, but the up down cardio is going to be there. Michael Chiesa has that cardio also. So yeah, I think that's gonna be a fun matchup. I like that call out. I hope that fight comes together in the near future because that's a really cool matchup for sure. All right, let's move on to the fight that everyone is talking about, the return of Conor McGregor. Dustin Poirier, obviously want to touch on the co-main event as well, but man, it's so hard with these big fights where there's just like so much to talk about. When I try to sit back and like coagulate my thoughts, I guess you might say, to me, I feel like it comes down a lot of times to X factors. And one I find really interesting is the fact that they're both southpaws, so they're fighting in a closed stance. And I don't know about you. I don't know if you feel like I'm getting a little bit too granular, like going there already, but it's a fascinating aspect of this particular fight. We didn't get to see them fight for a super long period of time. Last time was at featherweight. I think everybody can agree that they're both different fighters now. So I guess I'll toss it to you on that, on both of those points. Do you feel like them being a close stance and them fighting now both at 55, are those big enough factors where we're going to see a wildly different outcome?
I do. I do. I think the fact that they're both southpaws isn't being talked about enough.
Thank you.
Like I think like well yeah, like you feel
Yeah.
like oh I can't believe we're going to bring this up, but like I don't think it's being talked about enough. As a when you're standing, in an open fight stance where your left hand is forward, naturally when you're orthodox, you're going to always flow to your right. That's how people fight. We just work to our right, and that's how it goes. When you fight a southpaw as an orthodox fighter, you have to try to work to your left. It's an uncomfortable feeling for a lot of people because it feels like you're working in the wrong direction. But um, that's Connor uses that. He funnels people to his left side, which would be their right side,
Mhm.
and that's where he lands that right hand. He just funnels people right into that lane, and he lands that left hand over and over and over. When you're fighting another southpaw, they're moving exactly the same way that you're moving. So essentially, they're gonna. I see them working directly across the cage in front of each other a lot.
Mhm.
And it's going to be whoever's going to figure that out. Dustin does a better job, I think, of fighting from the opposite stance than Connor does. Like Connor switches, but it's very briefly, and
Yeah.
it's for specific techniques. Like he will switch because
Okay.
he has a plan and an idea.
Yeah.
Dustin flows back and forth more often and better than Connor does, and he's going to need to do that a lot, I think, in this fight because he's kind of stuck in a shitty spot. Like as close as I think this fight is going to be, I think Dustin has the higher mountain to climb, and that's not because he's not as good as Connor, he's not as powerful. Strictly because of Connor's ability to counter and how good Connor is moving forward.
Mhm.
Connor's kind of an anomaly there. Like either guys like to counter or they have to be the one being aggressive, walking people down.
He's really
Connor's very dangerous in both spots. So if you rush Connor, Jose Aldo found out what happens when you do that very quickly. And if you just stand back and you let Connor get in his rhythm, then he starts walking you down. He did this. He did it to Dennis Seaver. He did it to Chad Mendez. He did it to Nate Diaz when Diaz stopped pushing forward and started backing up. You start letting Connor run downhill, you got huge problems. But you can't rush him either because then he'll clip you on your way in.
Do you feel like Dustin needs to work a little bit more in a clinch range almost, because it's like I feel like Connor's preferred range is on the outside where he can sit back and be laser. And like you say, it's not just most people that like to fight from the outside are tend to be more counter strikers. And like you say, he's both. He's offensive and he's a counter striker, but he does like that long range because of how far he can throw that left hand and how he can like make you wade in by making you feel like you're further away than you really are. And then he shifts his torso. It's like, oh, fuck, you're right in my face all of a sudden. He's so tricky with the way that he manipulates range. It made me ask the question to myself, well, where should Dustin be in this fight? And a lot of people are talking, oh, he needs to chew up the lead leg. I completely agree with that as well. But where do you chew up that lead leg where you're not sitting down the pipe of that left hand as well? Because that's by far Connor's biggest weapon. Do you see Dustin? I don't know, like Dustin to me is he's a dog. Like he's a fighter's fighter, whereas Connor is, fight IQ out the charts and he's an artist. He's out there and he's in the flow and he's feeling himself and he makes magic happen. Dustin goes out there. and he just fights you and he makes you fight him. And I wonder if he can make this. I'm not saying early because I think early this would be a dangerous thing to do, but maybe when Connor's a little bit more tired in those later rounds, if it goes that far, turn it into a dog fight. It's something that I feel like you're the master of that, right? Like, okay, you're quote unquote maybe a better technician than I am, but I'm gonna make you fight me in a way that does not allow you to be artistic about it.
Yeah, it sounds really cliche, but you have my goal is always to make people uncomfortable. Uh, and it sounds like every soundbite that every fighter is going to say, like, "What are you going to do?" Like, I want to make him feel uncomfortable. But there's a lot of things you have to do that. And Dustin kind of does some of those things naturally, anyways. Like, if you really pay attention and watch Dustin fight, he floats back and forth across people's faces all the time. So you never really know what hip you're going to be fighting him from.
Mhm.
And I think you're absolutely right that that middle range, although very dangerous for anybody, doesn't matter who you're fighting. Middle range is absolutely the most dangerous place you can fight. That's your safest bet with Connor. He does a really good job. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson does the same thing. He uses his kicks to almost create this wall in front of people. John Jones did it to me actually, where they're throwing these kicks and like where those kicks end is where you feel like
Force feels.
right, like a force field. Like that's where I can't go in. If I go in there or if I slowly wade my way in, I'm going to get picked apart. So you feel like you have to crash, and that's what Connor wants. He wants you to crash in so he can clip you on your way in and counter you, like just like he did with Eddie Alvarez and Jose Aldo. Um, but you can't stand back because you're just going to get picked apart, and you can't let him back up. Like you can't let him dictate what's happening because then you end up looking like Chad Mendez, backing away, trying to defend what's coming. Eventually, one of those bullets are going to hit you in the head.
Mhm.
Um, so if I was Dustin Poirier or I was controlling his camp, I'm by no means no coaching genius, but you would have to fight him in that middle range. You can't let him bully you and push you around. You're going to take shots, and that's just part of it. But you have to make Connor uncomfortable. You can't let him get comfortable and be flowy and magical and
Make
that
a fight.
artistry that yeah that artistry that he talks about. Got to make it kind of ugly. Like I don't see Connor just like even in the Diaz fight, like as dog fight as that looked, Connor was never in that dog fight mentality. It was very much defend, 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 get
Mhm.
back, reset, and then sling some things at his head, and then get out of the dogfight. You got to kind of keep him in that dogfight a little bit and just make him uncomfortable. And Dustin does a great job of that. Anytime he got in those exchanges with Gaethje, they'd start exchanging, and Gaethje was always the first one to back out of it, and Dustin followed him and chased him down and forced him back into that
And
dogfight.
that's Gaethje's game. That's generally Gaethje's game. And
one Hundred
so to
percent.
see, Dustin kind of flip the script and do that to Justin, and it's funny that you say that because it was actually those highlights that made me think, like, this is exactly what he has got to do to Connor. Because no one, to this point, has put Connor in that place for long enough periods of time, for prolonged periods of time in the fight where he can't get the range to get his artistry going, like you said.
Well, Nate Diaz did it in the first fight.
Mhm. In the yeah,
Later on in the fight,
yeah.
like Connor was doing exactly what he wanted to do at the beginning.
Mhm.
He started getting a little tired, and then Diaz wasn't going away, and then he started pouring it on Connor. Connor tried to back out of the fire, and Diaz just kept walking him down and chasing him and not letting him really. Connor does very very well when he gets into a little bit like he gets in the shit for a second, and then he steps out, takes a deep breath,
And he's
resets,
yeah.
and then goes again. Then he's dangerous. That Connor is super dangerous.
Mhm.
If you don't let him take a step back, take a deep breath, reset himself, and go again, I think you can really start to give him problems, especially someone as good as Dustin Poirier. I'm not saying everyone in the division can do that, but I think I think a guy like Dan Hooker would do very well with Connor fighting at that long range. I think Dan Hooker would do a great job at that. A
Mhm.
guy like Dustin, it's just the way he's built and the way his skill set is. He's going to do better being exactly where he's comfortable and just making it ugly.
Yeah, and I feel like in the first maybe the first round, maybe the first 2 rounds, it's almost sort of the opposite of that, right? Because Dustin has a tendency to come out a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more tense and need a minute to kinda, like, flow into the fight, and he does the thing where he lands a nice combination, maybe finishes with a kick, comes back out. He has kind of this, like, shuffle, reset, and now I'm gonna, like, think about how I'm attacking next, and I feel like in the beginning of the fight, if Connor can do if Connor can be exerting the pressure, but at that range that he likes to be at, that really extended range where he's making you feel like he's a little bit closer, or that he's a little bit further away than he really is, then I feel like the first couple rounds, if Connor can do that and exploit the slight reset moments that Poirier has, then I mean that would be important for him to do early in the fight and protect that calf kick that everybody seems to be coaching him up on. And I was going to ask you too. I feel like this is my hot take. I feel like the next I feel like the next evolution in the sport is because you remember when like back in the day, someone would be in top guard and they'd have their arm across and we'd be like, oh, he's gonna get triangled, and everyone would get triangled. It was like no one could fucking figure out how to defend a triangle. And now triangles are rare. They're super rare because the
They're
defense,
not that rare.
they're not that rare.
Oh
Well, they
man.
are, but that makes them even more special.
That's true.
Makes
Triangles are hard to get. That's to your point. They're very,
Yeah,
very difficult.
yeah, which makes them special when they happen. But my point is the calf kick, right? Like, I've talked to James Krause about this a number of times. Like, who's going to start really figuring out the defense for that calf kick? And I know off the top of all of our heads, that's why it's so effective. Is there's not an obvious defense for it. There are things you can do to sort of mitigate it, but there's not an obvious defense for it. And I can't wait to see the fighter that comes along that has figured out, at least within their game, what they need to do to completely mitigate that. Because a lot of times guys are just like, well, my calf's getting kicked. I don't know what the hell to do about it. James kind of does this thing where like he rides the kick and allows it to take his foot underneath him and then steps over and actually will like post on the opposite shoulder. But I don't know. Do you feel like there is a defense that people are missing out on, or is it just the offense that just is gonna land? Excuse me.
Uh, I thought I had the answer for the calf kicks going into the Rakic fight.
Yeah.
And you know, people give me a lot of crap about that, like, oh, he doesn't know how to check leg kicks and blah 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 blah. Like I defended every single one of them. That's the problem with calf kicks. Like, you know, for the listeners at home or the people watching, like if you rub your hand down the front of your shin, there's this big muscle that's just on the outside of it, right? You can't, it doesn't matter if you check it because that's still getting attacked. All of that is your calf muscle. So it does wrap around to the front. Checking it is you turn your foot out, you put
You have to
pressure on it
like so far out that your hips out of position if you do it that way.
for sure. So I checked every single kick he hit me with, except for the last one because he threw two, I checked them both and knew right away, holy shit, this is a big problem.
Yeah.
Because it was just as effective as if I didn't check it. So the last one I was throwing a kick, so I was posted on that same leg, and that's the one he dropped me with. But I kind of do a similar thing that James does. If you can address it fast enough, and you can lift your foot and kind of let it take it, so it kind of takes. It's kind of like rolling with the punches, essentially. Just kind of go with it, but really you got to start firing right hands and make them not want to kick. You know, as far as defending the actual kick itself, it's really really hard to defend. You got to give them a reason to not want to throw the kick anymore.
Yep.
And my answer has been throwing straight right down the pipe, and hopefully you land it and make them not want to kick anymore. But
Yeah. And to your point earlier,
eventually someone's going to figure it out.
yeah, and to our point earlier, now that these guys are fighting in a closed stance, again, it's not obviously they're both pros, they're both training, they're aware of this, but it's not something that you see all the time. When you're a southpaw, you're not often training exclusively with other southpaws in that closed stance. So the defense, being aware of when you're getting calf kicked, what you are, or when you're delivering the calf kick, what you are opening yourself up to might not be at the most top of your muscle memory, having not necessarily trained round after round after round after round in that closed stance. So I think that'll be interesting for sure. What do you How do you see this fight playing out?
You know, to me, when I look at it from the outside, it's a 50-50. Um, it just really depends on, again, you know, I'm sure everyone in the world will say this, but it's who's going to be able to implement their game plan. And you know, Dustin's been in there a little bit more recently. I find myself leaning towards Dustin, but I've done that several times with Connor,
Mhm.
and most times he comes out and really surprises me and shocks me, and maybe it may be a recency bias thing because we haven't seen Connor in a while, and we've seen Dustin recently, and I don't know. I definitely don't think it's where the line is for sure. Like the betting odds are absolutely crazy. I can't believe
What
how
are
much
they right now? I
disre
don't remember.
I don't know where they are right now. I know Dustin's a huge underdog. It was enough to where I put some money on it just
Yeah.
because again, in my eyes, I think it's a 50-50 fight. And if the odds are swinging that far towards Connor, then I'm going to put some on the underdog. But if Dustin can stay safe in the first 2 rounds, that's when Connor's going to be his most dangerous. I think that as the fight goes on, it favors Dustin as long as he hasn't taken any significant damage in the beginning. I think that that's the part that people miss sometimes. Like, make it to the third and fourth round with Connor, and you'll be safe. It's not about just making it. You have to make it whole, like in the third and fourth round. You can't just survive in the first two and get smoked, be exhausted and hurt in the third and fourth, and think you're going to do well. Like, I think his main focus needs to be staying safe in the first 2 rounds and not taking any significant damage and make Connor work. You got to try to tax his gas tank a little bit and get him to slow down. I know he says that his conditioning issues are a myth. At the end of the day, it is what it is. We've seen him gas several times later in fights, three off the top of my head.
And
So
we haven't seen him fight longer than 37 seconds in several years now. So
right,
I think, as much as like you saw some greatness in that Cerrone fight, it's almost like there's a little asterisk there, right? First of all, Cowboy Cerrone, freaking legend of the game, but not at the top of not at the peak of his career when he fought McGregor. So sometimes it's like I make all these what ifs, and maybe he does this, and like, oh, he's got to get control of the fight early, and then I'm like, what do I even know about his game? We don't. How much is it potentially not changed, but like what tools has he added in the past couple of years that we don't even have any idea about? Like, just imagine a world where Connor like goes out there and blasts double legs. I'm not saying that that's
right.
gonna happen,
Wouldn't
but
that be
like,
wild though?
can you imagine like how fun that would be?
That would be awesome. But that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I find myself leaning towards Dustin, but it's because I haven't seen what Connor has to offer in a very long time. He had like what 40 seconds or 37 seconds in the
Yeah.
entire year. A year's a long time, and it seems like Connor's been on the right track. He seems like he's mentally healthy. He seems like he's emotionally in a good place, and he's been training. So I don't know where his skill level is in his not, I don't want to say shape. I'm sure he's in great shape, but I just, like you said, I don't know what skills he's added. So I do find myself leaning towards Dustin, but I wouldn't be blown away if Connor went out there and dominated him and finished him. That's just who Connor is. And anytime he's doubted, anytime I'm telling you, anytime I'm like, man, I don't know, I don't think Connor's got it this time. He's come out and shocked me and just
You want to put
done
a beer on
phenomenal
it?
things. Do I?
You want to put a beer on it?
Let's do it.
I'll take
You
Connor.
going with Connor? You're
Yeah.
taking Connor? All
Yeah.
right. A big beer though.
Like a like one of those 40s.
Yeah, like a 40 for sure.
Like a
A 40
Midwest giant fucking can that we get at the gas station.
for sure. The tall boys. We'll do a
Yes.
tall boy.
Yes. All right.
Apparently, apparently, the gas station by my house doesn't sell 40s anymore. I've been real
What?
disappointed about it. I know it's weird, right?
That's a travesty. You
It
can't
is
you can't live in Kansas, Nebraska, or Missouri and not be able to just walk down to the gas station, get yourself a 40.
for 100%. Did you watch the press conference?
I did. That was literally my next question. So I did. And I'll tell you what I found really fascinating. Um, I kind of miss asshole Connor. I do. I don't, as much as I don't want
Really?
Dustin Poirier, who seems like the most lovely human being that could possibly exist, as much as I don't want vitriol being slung in his direction. I guess I'm one of those, call me, I don't know, call me basic, but I don't mind the drama. And I love it when Connor's spitting one-liners. I think that's what it comes down to. So I appreciate the level of maturity that Connor seems to have achieved in the time that he's been away from, the biggest part of the spotlight. And I thought Chandler's comment of, the daddest man on the planet or whatever he called him
Yeah.
is so true. Like, you see fatherhood has sort of mellowed his sharper edges, and it's interesting to see. And I say don't like it because I really love the one-liners, but I like it. I like it in the sense that, to me, it shows a lot of growth in Connor, and I like it in the sense that we don't have to. I get annoyed with the conversations of like, oh, are the mind games gonna, like, play into the fight? And I'm sure that they can. I know that it can be a factor, but for whatever reason, I like it when that's not part of the conversation because at this point, I think Dustin Poirier is above that anyway. I think maybe the back and forths that they had before their first fight might have gotten Dustin a little bit riled up. And listen, you go back and you watch Dustin fight in the WEC on that gorgeous blue canvas. And he was like a much more emotionally based fighter. You'd go out there and like he'd take a shot and you can just see him like, oh no, I'm gonna get you one better, you know. And I just he doesn't fight like that anymore. So I don't think those things would necessarily be effective coming from Connor anyway. But it was just such a nice press conference. Everyone was so nice and so respectful and complimentary of each other across all four of them, actually.
Yeah, with the way that I kind of approach my career and the type of person I am, that was like my favorite press conference ever. Like
It's your
I love the
style.
one-liners.
Your
I do.
style.
I do. I love the it is my style, 100%. Uh I love the one-liners. I love when Connor's talking trash. It's fun, it's hilarious. He's very, very quick-witted and funny. But I there's something to be said, at least for me, about his confidence, but at the same time, him not having any issues, I don't know, complimenting anybody else
Yeah,
or giving anyone else any of his shine. I think that shows a lot of his maturity level. I
yeah,
think it shows a lot of where he's at. I mean, Connor of 4 or 5 years ago, was he giving anybody any compliments about anything?
no,
It was never. But
no.
like, it's like he's in a place where he's comfortable enough with himself and where he's at and how confident he is. He doesn't have any problem, you know, acknowledging that he's donating money to Dustin's
Yeah.
foundation, that Dustin is dangerous, that he's glad Michael Chandler's here, that he gave Dan Hooker a lot of shine. Uh, I just thought it was cool that like, and he seemed like a it sounds weird, but seems like he was a dad,
Yeah,
but to like the other fighters, like
yeah.
here I am, I've created this platform for you guys. Now let's rise up and make it shine
And
together.
I'm proud of
Which
you and, like yeah, it was
right, but like in the past, it
yeah.
was this is my fucking show. You
Mhm.
guys are just here because of me. Like it was essentially the same message, but it was I don't know, it was digested in a different way
It
than
was
it was
very
in the past.
kind. It was very
It
kind.
was.
And the
Like
thing that
he acknowledged that he built this platform.
yeah.
It was just he was okay with saying these guys are super dangerous and any of these guys could beat me. I built this, but let's do this together. And I thought
Let's
that was really
enjoy
cool.
the fruits of it together, and I mean, the thing that really stuck out to me in that press conference, and I don't know if you were watching it super closely when you were watching it, but, and I'm gonna forget his name, but the guy from Full Reptile that kind of read back to him the quote that he had
Love that.
given years ago, I swear to God, I think he almost started crying. Like, when he responded to the question, there was a catch in his throat, and you could see that, like because and if you guys didn't have a chance to watch it, what was read back, I'm obviously not gonna get it word for word what was, but, like, Connor, long time ago saying, "When my mom has a mansion and when my girlfriend has a car for every day of the week, and when, I have all of these things, then, I'll know I've done what I set out to do." And it was so powerful seeing that read back to him, and I've never seen that side of Connor before, where he looked like he was gonna almost shed a tear of, like of pride and of just it really touched his heart to know that he's done all that. He's done all that, but the cool thing and to his point, he's still here. He's still here. This whole like, "Oh, he's gonna make all this money and go away. He's just gonna go live on his yacht," whatever. No, he could. He put it out in the press conference. "I'm richer than Dana," which I think if you said Dana, Dana kind of laughed at that. He's like, okay, yeah, he probably is." Um, but he's still here, and he's not fighting for a belt, right? Like these are all things that I think years ago we'd be like, "Oh, once he makes this amount of money, we're never going to see him again," or "Oh, Connor won't come back and fight if it's not for a belt." No, he's doing both of those things. And they're things that he doesn't necessarily have to do to cement some type of legacy. So to that point, to me, he is fighting now for something greater than money. And he kind of alluded to it when he said, "I want my highlight reel to be like that of Ali or these greats where we have these iconic pictures and everybody and they're on shirts, and everybody knows when that happens. He wants his highlight reel to be as long as a movie. So it's really cool to see him evolve from the guy who's just out there hogging the spotlight. I did this. You guys are only here because of me, to mature into this same amount of confidence, almost the same message as you said, Anthony, but wrapped and delivered so differently, so kindly, so retrospectively, so introspectively. Man, it gave me chills to see him almost shed a tear. That was really cool.
Yeah, I love those guys from Full Reptile too, the
Yeah.
little raptors.
Yeah.
They're phenomenal little guys. But when he was reading that back to Connor, I'm not lying to you. Like I started getting the chills and like tearing up a little bit.
Yeah.
Not because of what Connor's response was gonna be. I had no idea, but listening to it, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Excuse me, like this game will drive you crazy. It'll ruin your life if you let it, because I think he was comparing that to Vincent van Gogh,
Yes,
how
it
like
was. Yeah.
his love for the art drove him absolutely crazy. And it absolutely doesn't. And it's drove me crazy, and drove me to do and say and act certain ways. It can ruin your life. And we can go back over history over and over and over again and see how many guys that this game has destroyed. So like, and the things that he wanted are absolutely things that drive all of us. Like we all want to buy our parents nice houses and take care of them, and the people that support us, our wives or girlfriends or whatever. Like we all want those things. And I think he mentioned his kids will never want for anything. Like we all want that. And like seeing him react to it, like I it's like you kind of know what he's feeling. Like that's exactly what we all want. And like you've done that. And that's absolutely crazy to me.
Yeah, it's not hard to it's hard not to love someone in that moment, because as brash as he can be and as big as he can be and all that stuff, like seeing how much that meant to him, like really kind of humanized him in a way that was really cool, at least to me. So
Yeah, I loved it. And then to your point about why he's still here, he talked about that a lot. I I think that our sport is so much different than other sports because of the type of people that compete at a high level, like in the UFC, in MMA. So football players, a lot of times, make their money and they sail off into the sunset. They create another business. They live happily ever after. NBA guys do it. Baseball players do it. And obviously, there's your guys that end up broke later on or whatever. But MMA is different because it's the humans that exist in this sport at a high level. We're we're not normal people. So it wouldn't matter if you gave me $100 million. If I stop fighting, I don't have anything.
mhm.
And it's not about having something in terms of money and place to live and the ability to go on without worrying about that kind of stuff. I think that part of Connor's issues have been that he hasn't had this sport to focus on. Like even right now, I'm kind of going crazy because I haven't fought. I fought in November and it's only January, and I'm already starting to lose my shit here because I don't have a focus. I don't have a goal. Obviously I'm training and doing my thing and I'm busy around here at the house, but like my whole life has been focused on this one thing in front of me, and it's chasing this title. And so even in the couple months that I haven't had a body in front of me to focus on, you start to lose it a little bit. You start to like lose track and lose focus, and your brain scrambles a little bit. Like now imagine I had $100 million in a yacht and a business and I can go party and do whatever the fuck I want. No one's going to tell me anything. Like you can see how someone could spin out of control and start losing it. And now all of a sudden Connor's got a new focus. He's he's maturing. He's got his family, and now he's got something that he really gives a shit about, and that's fighting, and that's his highlight reel, and that's chasing this title, and that's doing all the stuff he's done again. That's there's I don't know what it is about our sport or the type of personalities of the people that compete at a high level in the sport. It's just that's why none of us can retire. That's why you see guys like Donald Cerrone who has it all. He's Donald Cerrone said he doesn't need any money. Um, he's done it all. He's broken all the records. He's had the most fights. He's got the bonus record, I believe. Like, what else is there for Donald to do? He's
Mhm.
got a whole bunch of other shit he could do. He's got the ranch, he's got all that shit. He's got plenty of stuff to fill his time, but he keeps coming back to get punched in the face. And until people, I guess, figure out that there's a way deeper reason for him wanting to do that, I think that people aren't going to quite understand fighters all the time.
That's what makes retiring from the sport incredibly difficult for a lot of people, and difficult as a fan when you see it happen, and even just the little tiny taste of it that I had myself. It's part of why I do what I do now, because if I can't do that, I got to be like, the second best thing is just being in and around it and talking about it and being a part of it and having the adrenaline rush of being near it. So I get it on a very small level as well. But we only have a few minutes left before we make this way too long of a podcast. So in the last few minutes, let's touch real quick on the co-main event: Dan Hooker, Michael Chandler. And man, I love Michael Chandler so much. I think he adds such a spice to this division. And you're like, oh well, he's not a specialist. He's nothing crazy. I would argue that Michael Chandler brings an a style of wrestling at a level that's a little bit different even than Habib. Habib, you have to say, is the best wrestler at lightweight, probably the best wrestler in the UFC, maybe of all time. I think I'm not afraid to go there. Michael Chandler's wrestling, though, is that elite folk style wrestling. And he's much even better than Habib at shooting takedowns in the open mat, getting those blast double legs, that traditional explosive wrestling. He can chain wrestle as well off the cage, just the way Khabib can as well, but he's got that element of open mat wrestling. And I'm anxious to see how Dan Hooker handles that, because while Dan's game is built around a ridiculously educated jab, knees that will freaking murder you if you do try to shoot on him, deceptively powerful for being, a lankier guy. He's got a ton of length on Chandler. I can't wait to see the spice that Michael's going to bring to this entire division when we see this fight play out.
I'm really glad you brought up those two style differences in Khabib and Michael Chandler. Khabib is not snatching singles in the center of the octagon and finishing those takedowns. He's not blast doubling anybody. He's going to force you against the cage, and once you get there, so far no one's been able to have an answer for that. Michael Chandler is very much the guy that's going to snatch a single leg and sit you right in your ass wherever you're standing.
Yep.
And that's a different type of wrestler to deal with. It's a whole different bag of problems. And I'm excited to see that. We all know Michael Chandler's good. We all know he's world class. I believe that Michael Chandler's not going to be one of those guys that's, your Hector Lombards that was the former champion. Another organization comes in and doesn't exactly perform the way that we thought he was going to. I don't see that happening with Michael Chandler. I think he's going to forever, whether he wins this fight or loses this fight, I think he's going to kind of always be in that mix of the top five. I'm really high on Dan Hooker, though. I'm not, and again, I'm not saying Michael Chandler is going to win or not going to win. I honestly think it's another one of those fights we don't really know until we watch it. Dan Hooker actually said, I think after the first 5 minutes, you think we're going to know exactly how this is going to go.
Yeah.
And I think he's right. I like Dan Hooker's mentality right now. I like that he called Charles Oliveira Charlie Olives. I thought that was hilarious. I think forever now.
I've got toothpicks sturdier than that guy. I'm not going to be able to.
What did he say? I got broomsticks that are thicker than that boy.
Thicker than that boy.
Oh man, that was a pretty good one-liner. It really just comes down to, can Dan Hooker defend a takedown?
Mm-hmm.
If he can't defend a takedown, got big problems. It's just, it goes back to that kind of Chiesa Magny matchup.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we're going to see that. I think this is going to show that Michael Chandler is absolutely world class, but I think it's going to take him a while to like really get used to the level that the UFC is at. And I'm not trying to knock Bellator. I'm not knocking any of the guys that he's fought before. Michael Chandler's beat UFC caliber guys. He's beat UFC former champions before. He's never done it while they were in their prime. And I think that's what he needs in his career. If he's going to solidify this legacy that he was one of the best ever, he has to do this. But I think he's going to struggle a little more than I think a lot of people are expecting.
I completely agree with everything that you just said. And if this was a 5-round fight, I think I would lean more heavily Hooker than I am. And I'm not necessarily, I actually haven't even really made a pick in my own head, but I think another thing, another notch in the column of Michael Chandler is the fact that it's a 3-round fight, and he's so good at starting aggressively, starting strong, and then again, I just go back to the style of wrestling that he brings to this division. And I was trying to go through uh, Hooker's last, like 5 opponents. Do any of them have that, D1 level folk style wrestling, like you said, single legs, blast double legs, all that type of stuff. Mizzou, by the way. Um, had to say that. I don't know that he has, and so I think the fact that it's 3 rounds, I think the wrestling that Chandler brings, but certainly if this was a fight that were to, for whatever reason, play out primarily on the feet, Hooker all day. Hooker all day. I love me some Hooker. Clip that.
Yeah, we're gonna use that. We're gonna absolutely use that. No, I agree. I agree with you. And I don't think either one of those guys would disagree with that. I
Yeah.
think this is a very much striker versus grappler. But Dan Hooker's very confident in his takedown defense, and he talked about that in the press conference that his style is built to beat dominant wrestlers. Um, Unfortunately, we just haven't seen him do it, and that's because he hasn't had the opportunity.
Mhm.
It's not because we've seen him have the opportunity and it not work out. He just hasn't had that shot. So
Yeah.
um, those are the 2 fights I'm most excited for. I took a glance at the rest of the card and was like pretty happy about what I was seeing. Like that's kind of the problem as analysts and I guess members of the media. Like we don't necessarily always get a chance to really dive deep into the card. Um, but I guess what I would say to everyone at home, I would watch this card from beginning to end
Start to
if
finish.
you have the opportunity, because there's a couple really, really good fights on there. Anytime Andrew Sanchez fights, I know former opponent. I always root for that guy. He's always in an exciting fight, whether he's on the bad end of it or on the winning end of it. Juliana Pena's on there. I mean, there's a couple really, really good fights.
And lately, it's been the undercards and been the entirety of cards that were all like, nah, they're not necessarily to have the name value. It's been those cards that have been delivering some hellacious knockouts lately. So I'm with you. I'm watching this thing start to finish, not going to miss a minute of it. And hopefully, we'll get a chance to chat about it afterwards, Anthony. Maybe not 6 months from now.
Yeah, we should let's try to keep these a little more regular. I have a
Okay.
good time talking about fights. So
Okay. All right.
yeah. Are you
Thank-
are you gonna give us a pick on the Hooker
oh, fuck.
Chandler one?
Well, just okay, just for fun, then I'll go. You went Hooker, I'll go Chandler. So just to make it keep it spicy.
240s.
2-4. That's that. Is that an 80?
240s.
Look at
That's
me
an
doing
80. That's an 80. 240s.
math.
We'll do like that Edward 40 hands.
Oh, clip that too.
It'll just tape
Okay.
them up.
Yeah. And on that note,
Yeah.
thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching Hooks In. For Anthony Smith, I'm Laura Sanko, and we will see you sooner than 6 months from now.